You slipped up, you had a cheat meal. Maybe it was planned, maybe it wasn't, but you did it, all right? You went out and you had some cake, or maybe you had some pie, maybe you had some pasta, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're calling in a cheat meal mayday. What do you do? How do you recover from this? Can you bounce back? Of course you can. And the first thing I want you to know before anything else is that you're human, it happens, it's not a big deal, and it's part of the process anyway. So just don't dwell on it, just roll with the punches. But I am gonna give you a strategy, I'm gonna make it a lot easier, and this is sort of the tool you can have in your toolbox, so to speak. I do wanna make sure you hit that red subscribe button because you're gonna get all the diet information, all the fat loss information you could ever need. And I also wanna have you turn on that little bell icon. That bell icon allows you to turn on notifications. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get right into this. First things first, on hand, you should always have some chromium, okay? Chromium is really inexpensive, really easy to get, and honestly, it's just something that you could take just a few caps of and be totally fine after a cheat meal as far as blood glucose goes. One of the biggest issues that happens with a cheat meal is you have a big surge of sugar, a big surge of blood glucose that your body's not used to. And if you're on keto, then this can be a big shock to you. But it doesn't matter whether you're low carb or not, cheat meals are usually high carbohydrate, and this is a great way to recover from it. Here's what chromium does, and I drew a fun little picture here to make some sense of it. It brings what is called GLUT4 to the surface of a cell. So here's my cell, right? And these little purple asterisks, those are what are called GLUT4. They are glucose transport molecules. Here's my bloodstream. Okay, I've got blood flowing, and then those little blue dots are glucose. That's your cheat meal right there, floating on through. Okay, well, what happens is normally if you have a cheat meal, you can develop a level of insulin resistance where your blood glucose just stays really elevated and causes problems. It makes you insulin resistant, which can make you fat later on. It's a big problem. That's how cheat meals can make you fat. Okay, here's the issue. GLUT4 hangs out in the middle of the cell, and it doesn't really do a whole lot. But then in a healthy body, it gets acted upon and it goes to the surface of the membrane, which is this outer perimeter here. And when it hangs out at the surface, it has a little net and it grabs glucose. It says, come on, glucose, and it pulls the glucose out of the bloodstream, okay? So the cool thing is chromium activates more GLUT4 and brings more GLUT4 to the surface. So now we have a clear path and it can grab it. It can go in there with its net and it can grab the glucose, which brings your blood sugar down, improves your insulin sensitivity, and gives you back on track much faster. Okay, so even just something like 1,000 micrograms of chromium can really make a big, big difference there. Okay, you can go upwards of that. It's water soluble, so quite honestly, you'll just urinate out what you don't use. Number 2. A couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar right after you have the cheat meal can make a huge difference. Sometimes cheat meals just happen. Like, we're like, what did I just do? Like, what just happened? Like, I was doing so good. Having a little bit of apple cider vinegar on hand goes a long way, and this is not just bro science on the internet. Okay, there is a study that was published in the journal Diabetes Care. Took a look at placebo versus 20 grams of apple cider vinegar. What they did is they had subjects consume 87 grams of carbs by way of a white bagel, butter, and orange juice. Lots of carbs. And then in some groups, they had them consume ACV, and in some groups, the placebo. They found that ACV, apple cider vinegar, increased their insulin sensitivity by 34%. 34%. So basically, it dropped their blood sugar and made it so they're insulin sensitive again and not making themselves insulin resistant, therefore bringing you back to baseline a lot faster. Did it solve the problem? Did it cut the calories? No, but it at least mitigated the damage. Number 3 is a really important one when we're talking about the world of minerals. What are usually common in cheat meals? Well, usually you're gonna have sugar, you're gonna have fat, and you're gonna have salt. Lots of salt. Salt is not a bad thing, but when you have a bunch of it coming in the presence of insulin with the carbohydrates, it's bloat city. You don't wanna go to bloat city. Everyone's ugly. You don't want it. Okay, so the whole thing is with bloat, you're going to be puffy for multiple days, but also with that bloat, it can really masquerade fat that you gain. So it's really just hard to tell, and it's really frustrating, and it makes you feel very inflamed, and it causes damage within the body. What is the opposite of sodium for all intents and purposes? Potassium. A mineral that we quite frankly do not get enough of, especially on a ketogenic diet if we're not eating our greens. If we're doing dirty keto where we eat just lettuce wrap burgers and things like that all the time, but don't actually get our veggies in, you're low in potassium. So what we need is we need that potassium to counteract the sodium. Here's what happens inside a cell. Okay, we have a large amount of potassium that gets concentrated inside a cell, which causes sodium to be concentrated outside a cell. Puffiness. We need the sodium to go in the cell, and we need the potassium to come out. So here's what it looks like. When a neuron fires, and this is really complicated and made simple, a neuron fires, sends an action potential. The neuron fires and says, I want to send a signal to the muscle in the leg, okay? So it sends the signal and it sends a bunch of sodium into the cell all of a sudden. Boom, sodium goes into the cell, action potential, energy, sodium floods the cell. That's like one shot, boom, okay? It's like you just pulled back a slingshot and fired it. Okay, well now you have to pull the slingshot back again. Well, sodium has already left the building. You need potassium to pull the slingshot back. It's like a reset button. Neuron fires, sodium goes in the cell, and potassium pulls it back again to fire sodium in again. Without potassium, we just have a bunch of sodium floating here, not getting into the cell, doing ugly things. So we need potassium to reset the button. So how do you get potassium? One of the things that I would recommend is literally just having potassium chloride hanging around. Inexpensive, $5, $6 supplement on Amazon that you can get in a powder form, and you have a teaspoon of it. It kind of tastes like salt. If you've ever seen at the grocery store, you'll see new salt, you'll see low salt, things like that. But the other thing is have high potassium foods laying around. This is so important. Okay, all kinds of snacks, avocado, seaweed snacks, kale snacks, things like that. If you guys want some ideas, I have a link down below for Thrive Market. I've been able to put together keto bundles and fasting bundles and all kinds of grocery bundles that literally have high potassium foods that are easy to snack on and still taste good, so that could work really well after a cheat meal and you're trying to recover and still have just good food. So click on the link down below after you watch this video and you can check out Thrive. So online grocery store, they're membership based, so you just get a membership, but it's really inexpensive. And basically, it's like going to the grocery store, but online, but for healthy foods, and it's cheaper. So anyway, make sure you check them out down below in the description, and also all kinds of other cool boxes, hormone boxes, thyroid boxes, things that I've put together with my recommendations. Okay, so moving on to the next one, after you check that out, we've got high intensity interval training. This should be done the next day, not right after. Okay, the next day you've got these large amounts of carbohydrates that are stored. So the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science in Sport published a study that found when they took a look at HIIT training, high intensity interval training, traditional or moderate intensity circuit training, there are some pretty stark differences. Interval training versus moderate intensity circuit training. They found that with HIIT training, whole body glucose uptake increased 25%, meaning the glucose that was taken up by the cells ended up being increased a quarter, 25%, just by doing HIIT instead of medium intensity work. So doing intense work for 15, 20 seconds, hardcore all the way, and then recovering as long as it takes. Then 15, 20 seconds, just for like 10 minutes. You don't even need to do much, and it's gonna increase how much glucose your body takes up. Okay, and this next piece is probably the most important one. And I call it the 3 Ds. The 3 Ds of a cheat meal, and that is don't fast, don't diet, don't obsess. Because if you focus on the cheat meal, first of all, it's emotionally going to wreck you. Take it from someone that lived on cheat meals when they were overweight before, that would be me. It messes with your head. Some people will say, should I fast the next day? Physiologically speaking, yes. Fasting could be great, could be a great strategy to balance things out. Do you really want to create a vicious cycle for yourself where you binge and then fast? Binge and then fast. That is a definition of an eating disorder, and we do not want to get ourselves going down that road. Fasting is where you are in control, not where you are being reactive. Do not fast because you're being reactive. Fast because you're being proactive. Fast on your terms, not on your emotional disconnect cheat meal terms. That's not the way to fast. Don't diet, don't change your diet. These are quick little things that you do to be healthy, to mitigate your issue. Okay, the Mayday call calls for these. These are things that you do. This HIIT is a fun lifestyle way to work out afterwards. These things are important. Don't obsess, don't dwell on it, don't think about it. You roll into what you were doing before. your healthy lifestyle. Do not try to compensate, just go through it. So anyhow, we can dive into a lot more of the emotional side of this, but now you have the strategy, you have the tools, and you have the mental wherewithal to make the best decisions. And I do, once again, recommend you do check out Thrive, because honestly, they've got some cool foods and they can make it so that you're not having to have these cheat meals and you can actually get on with your life. And anyhow, I'll see you in the next video, and don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and little bell icon to turn on notifications. See you soon.